Before we start getting into the technical aspects of operating systems, I want to go over some very basics for people who are new to computers or are not well exposed to high technology. And I've seen people get confused about some of the basics that they need to know just to understand how a computer works and what they can do with it, and basically how to find things. So we're going to take a step back and look at the computer from some of the simple things it does rather than get into the details just yet. So the confusion I've seen is that computers are information engines. They are used to store, manipulate, and present information. So we have information stored somewhere, and then we have a place where we can manipulate that information, and then some way that we can see that. And you're probably already familiar with most of what you need to know, like how to use the mouse and how to use the keyboard and how to move things around the screen. But still, you might not understand fully what's going on and just the basic idea behind what a computer does. So in the early days of computers were thought of as calculating engines, and that's basically what they did. Some of the uses for computers were calculating ballistic trajectories for artillery shells. But once computers started moving into industry, people found that they were more of an information machine than a calculating machine. So the biggest users of computers were banks, which of course used them for calculating, but also manipulating and storing and finding account information, and then insurance companies and the government, such as the Social Security Office or departments of motor vehicles, which mainly use computers to store and easily retrieve information. So if we take a step back and forget about all the manipulation and all the complicated stuff that goes on in the processor and all the circuitry around it, let's take a step back and just look at how the computer handles stuff for us. So we have a couple of entities we need to know about. One is the hard drive. We might call this the hard disk or the hard drive. The hard drive holds the hard disk. And we talked about how this works in the computer hardware class. And so if you want to know more about that, you need to back up to the computer hardware. But the hard drive is a magnetic storage medium. We put information on there and it pretty much stays there once we put it there unless we change it. Now, of course, today we have solid state drives and we have SD cards and USB thumb drives and all sorts of places we can store data, but they all look the same. And the metaphor that computer programmers used is that of a filing cabinet. So we can think of our hard drive as a filing cabinet. I'll just draw a little cabinet there with a door on it. And in the Windows world, we label our hard drive as C. I'll just put a C colon right there. Why not A or B? Well, in the early days of personal computers, we had floppy drives, which were very useful in their day, but you don't even see those anymore because there are things that are better, such as SD cards and USB thumb drives. So your first floppy drive was A, your second floppy drive was B, and then the first hard drive was C, and now we no longer have an A or a B. So we think of that as C. So you go into your File Explorer and you see there is a hard disk called C. Think of it as a filing cabinet. And what do we have in a filing cabinet? Well, we have file folders and we have documents or files. And so we think of that C as one huge file folder. So I'll kind of draw it like that. There's a little tab on there that says C. And we call that the root folder or the root directory. I'm going to call it directory here. We use the term directory and folder interchangeable. That's because, especially in the early days, when you wanted to see what was on your computer, you typed a command dir, which is short for directory, and it would give you a list of files on your floppy disk, or these days your hard disk. So it's a list. So we called it a directory. But then again, we think of that as a folder these days. So think of the folder as having a whole bunch of file folders and files in it, and listed on the front is a list of what's inside it, and that is the directory. So folder and directory are interchangeable. I mean the same thing. So if I say directory or I say folder, I mean the same thing. So our root folder or our root directory has whole bunches of other file folders in there, and each of those has files in it, and they can also have file folders in there. So can you put a file folder inside another file folder? Sure you can. Maybe kind of messy in a real filing cabinet, but we do it on the hard drive at all times. So this is your permanent storage. You put something there, it's stored magnetically or otherwise stored in a permanent way. You turn off your power, have a power failure or whatever, it's still there. When you turn your computer back on, it's still there and you can retrieve it and do what you need with it. So that is your permanent storage, your hard disk or SSD or whatever you're using these days. The other thing we have is our working memory. And we may call this random access memory or RAM. And this is memory that's like your desktop. So you want to go work on something, you go to your filing cabinet, go to your drawer, open that up, find the folder you want, take the file out, put it on your desk. Now, the problem is, if something goes wrong, you still have your copy on the hard drive, but if you make some changes and then the power goes out, well, you lose that. It's sort of like when that thing is on your desk, you want to be careful with it because maybe if you turn your back, someone might take it. You know, or maybe the window, blow it out the window. You could lose it. So when it's not on the hard disk, it's kind of vulnerable. So while you're working on something, whether it's a spreadsheet or a word processor document, manipulating a picture, making a movie, whatever, you want to save frequently. Some programs save automatically, but most of the time you have to manually save that. When you save that, you're taking the copy you're working on right now, taking that to your cabinet, you take out the old one and toss it and put the new one in so that what's on your hard drive or in your filing cabinet is a copy of the latest changes to your document that you have in the unsafe place on your disk. So remember, when it's on your screen and you're manipulating it, it's not safe. If the power goes out, you're probably going to lose it. Or if you leave your desk, someone can fiddle with it, or who knows what could happen. So you want to save that frequently, which is taking your working copy, throw out the old one on the hard drive, put the new working copy in so that what's on the hard drive represents your most recent working copy. So that's your memory. And if power goes out, whatever's in memory, it's gone. So remember, unsafe, safe. And while I'm at it, I just want to talk about confusion I often see when people are working on the internet. This doesn't have to do with operating systems per se, and we'll talk about this when we do applications and talk about internet browsers and such. But confusion I see is that there are three entities we're working on the internet. We have web pages, and we have web browsers, and we have search engines. And some people get a little bit confused about which is which and what we're doing and where we are. And so let's take a look at what these actually do. So a web page is a file on another computer somewhere else. It's a computer that has a program running on it called a web server. In fact, if that's all that computer does, we might call the computer itself a web server. So somewhere in the filing cabinets on some computer, somewhere, who knows where, are some files, and they're designed a certain way for you to see them on the internet. And so that's what a web page is one of those files somewhere else that you can look at. But mainly you look at them, do what they do, and they stay somewhere else on the web server. The web browser, the web browser is a program on your computer that you use to look at web pages. And so web browsers, the most famous one, of course, is Chrome. And we have some other ones like Safari. Well, you Apple people probably use that, although there is a Windows version of that. Another one is Firefox. That used to be the #1 web browser, but Chrome has 90% of the traffic now, and Firefox is almost an also-ran. Chrome, everything you do, it sends to Google. They know what you're doing. Firefox, they don't. Another one is called Opera, and I forgot the Edge from Microsoft. So those are programs you run on your computer to see web pages. So you open up your browser, there's a little window, you type in a domain name or a path to a particular file. If you go to the domain name, the web server is going to give you a default file and say, here I am. Or you can say a particular file that you want, or if you click on a link, it'll go look for a particular file, and that web server will send that particular file to your web browser, and that is a web page. Web pages can also do much more complicated things. For example, most people use web mail these days. In the old days, we used to download our email to our computer. Now we have it on someone else's computer, such as Gmail or Outlook, Yahoo Mail. And now that's presented as a web page, and you're able to interact with that web page to read your email, send email, put it in different folders or whatever, and it's off somewhere else. And that is a web page that you are viewing in your web browser to do your email. And there's all sorts of things you can do on web pages. They can be programmed to do virtually anything you need. Now, last but not least, we have a search engine. The famous search engines are Google. I'll just write that here. They're the best known one. Bing is Microsoft's search engine. And one that's up and coming, in fact, the one I use, because guess what? Google, just like Chrome, everything you do on Google, Google watches you. They know what you're doing. So I have gone to DuckDuckGo. Silly name, but a lot more private than going to Google. Tell you the truth, Google used to be the best. They gave you the best results. That's why they got as big as they got. I like the results from DuckDuckGo better than Google nowadays. Google has gotten more interested in feeding you sponsored web pages and throwing ads at you rather than giving you good results. So that's my recommendation. So that is a search engine. So search engine, you go to the search engine, go google.com. It says, what would you like to look for? I would like to find underwater basket weaving. And then there you get pages about underwater basket weaving. So these search engines have huge databases of what's on the internet. So you can type what you want and they say, oh, okay, I can send you that page. That gives you a whole list of pages. You're familiar with it. A whole list of different sites and pages you can go to that they think are related to what you want to look at. And so search engines are Google, Bing, DuckDuckGo, and others. So that's kind of related to understanding what's going on the computer level. Not much to say there, just the idea of a filing cabinet and working memory. That, remember, when it's in your working memory, you can lose it, so keep it safe on your filing cabinet. On the internet, we have web pages, which are files on another computer called a web server. We have web browsers that can query that web server and say, hey, show me some web pages, and then you can do whatever those web pages allow you to do. And then if you want to find the web page that talks about what you want to know about, you can go to a search engine. Oh, and by the way, all of these browsers, these are the web browsers that allow you to go to the web servers, they will each have a default search engine. So you can type an address in the address bar, a domain name, or a path to a file, or you can type a search term. And whichever is the default search engine, it'll turn over to that. So like Chrome is going to go to, guess what, Google. Edge is going to go to Bing. Firefox goes to Google. And I don't know what the other ones go to by default, but of course you can change that. I use Firefox. Normally Firefox goes to Google. I said, no, when I do a search, I want you to go to DuckDuckGo. So I don't have to go to DuckDuckGo and then type in my search. I just go to my address bar in Firefox, type it in, and it takes me straight to DuckDuckGo, and there's my results. So just remember the difference. Web pages, that's a file on some computer somewhere out on the internet. A web browser is a program you use to read those web pages. Those are Chrome, Safari, Firefox, Opera, and Edge. And a search engine is a web server that has a huge database of information so that you can search and it'll say, I think you can try these different web pages to find the information you want. And those search engines are, biggest ones are Google, Bing, and DuckDuckGo. So those are some of the very basic things you need to know about computers for those of you who are at the lowest level and just getting into this. And the next thing we're going to do is do a review of the computer hardware. So we had the computer hardware class that you may or may not have already taken, have a quick review of that, and then get on into how operating systems work and how to use Windows. So if you found this useful and informative, please give me a like, give me a thumbs up down below. It really helps the channel. And don't forget to subscribe and hit that gray bell when you do so you get notified when I put up new videos. And to take my free course in computer operating systems, you can go to Vocademy.net and sign up. It's 100% free. And to help me put these videos online and keep Vocademy free, you can go to patreon.com/Vocademy and pledge your support. Or you can go to support.vocademy.net and see other ways to help me. Big thank you to my patrons at Patreon. I could not do this without your support, and thanks to everyone for watching.